Let's get ourselves in the frame of mind here, shall we? And we'll take a moment of quiet to center ourselves and just get ready to do a little learning and then a little sitting together this morning. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 la. Well, again, Boker Tov, everyone. I give out what a week we've been through. Terrible, terrible things happening all around us in the world. Lots of truly disturbing things, lots of terrible things, and that's why I'm really glad we have these meditation sessions. I know I need it, so I'm sure we all do. And I decided the text I want to teach today as part of our meditation, I found some texts that deal with anxiety and how to, literally rabbinic texts that treat the subject of anxiety. And so I want to look at those in light of our mindfulness practice that we are sharing together. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, hopefully we can all see that. And so I want us to begin this morning by looking at this line from the 12th chapter of Proverbs. And that's a place to start. If there is anxiety, the Hebrew word is da'aga, in a man's heart, let him quash it and turn it into joy with a good word. See, that's all we had to do. Just quash it. At first blush, this might not seem like the most psychologically sophisticated statement, but I want us to literally sit with this and with other teachings from the tradition to see where it leads us, because it actually all leads us to the many layers of rabbinic teachings in new ways. So let's just start from the basics. Clearly, even in the book of Proverbs, which is the biblical layer, anxiety is no good. Anxiety is dangerous, it's pernicious. And here in Sanhedrin, in the second text, they extend this idea here: do not introduce anxiety into your heart, as anxiety has killed mighty men. So we know anxiety bad. We know it is not a healthy state of mind or state of heart or state of spirit. It is inherently unhealthy, which then leads us to an interesting exploration then of anxiety versus fear. We think of anxiety as an aspect of fear, as a form of fear, but our tradition has a different relationship to the concept of fear than it does to the concept of anxiety. Um, Here's a little bit later in the book of Proverbs. Happy is the man who is fearful always, but he who hardens his heart falls into misfortune. I don't know about you, but at first blush, this seems like Meshuggah stuff. To be happy is to be fearful. That doesn't sound like a healthy way of looking at life at all. But actually, when we look again at this text, it actually is, when we look again through the lens of mindfulness practice, it begins to make sense, especially when we compare Proverbs 28 to Proverbs 12. Fear, or pachad, or mifached is pachad, fear, has dimensions that are healthy, whereas anxiety doesn't. So what on earth could be healthy about fear? Well, one way to understand it is look at what it's being contrasted to. It's being contrasted to the makshe lev. That's what Pharaoh was, right? To be hardened of heart, right? So to have a rigidity of heart is the opposite of fear. So what does that mean? Remember that in Jewish, biblical, ancient mindset, the heart and the mind are not two different things. The heart and the mind are the same thing. So rigidity of mind becomes the opposite of pachad. So that's instructive, right? So when we are stuck in a pattern of thinking, that is unhealthy. But pachad is the opposite. So pachad is actually something that we call in mindfulness practice, particularly in like Zen Buddhism, they call it the don't know mind, right? It is the state of mind of such radical openness. It's the opposite of rigidity. It's the state of mind that is so open that we live in the space of, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know anything solidly. For most of us in our natural state of being, the don't know mind is terrifying. That's pachad, to be in the dark, to not know what's going to happen next. We associate that experience with being out of control. But actually, when we sit in our mindfulness practice, we begin that, by the way, can we unmute ourselves? I think some of us might be unmuted. So just check to make sure that you're muted during this, because somebody's got their microphone on. So when we engage in our mindfulness practice, we are actually engaging in the state of acclimating ourselves, of becoming comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen. Now, how is that different from anxiety? Well, that's the big question, right? Anxiety is inherently what's going to happen, isn't it? So we need more information. We need to understand the difference between them. Here's a text from the Talmud, from Yoma, that's about that line from Proverbs. The Gemara explains another verse in Proverbs: if there's anxiety in a man's heart, let him quash it. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi dispute the verse's meaning. One said he should forcefully push it, yashchena, out of his mind. One who worries should banish his concerns from his thoughts. That's how we read Proverbs. And one said, this is Rabbi Asi, disagreed and said it means you should tell, yesichena, others his concerns, which will lower his anxiety. So you see the Hebrew word here, if you follow the arrow, yashchena means to quash, and yesichena looks very similar, but it's a different reading with the different vowels. It means to talk about it, right? So this is actually the ancient Talmudic endorsement of talk therapy, of the idea of, if you are plagued by anxiety, you should find another loving, listening ear to be able to speak the anxiety to, And that is actually the way in which you quash it. So the rabbis understand something that the earlier layer of Proverbs didn't understand, perhaps, that it's not simply a question of crushing anxiety and trying to push it away or repress it, but rather it is to listen, to give it its voice, to have somebody listen to the worry. Because sometimes in the act of telling our worry to another human being, they can both reflect back its inaccuracy, or just there's something cathartic about being able to talk about it. When we look at this in light of mindfulness practice, we see something even deeper. When we're sitting with our thoughts, and particularly our anxious thoughts, we're in a sense in dialogue with our own awareness. We are the loving, listening ear within which the anxious thoughts arise. So we become both the worrier and the one who is beyond worry, the other, as it were, before whom we can expiate the anxiety, right? So we can always look at these things in terms of the individual mindfulness practice. Finally, before we sit, I want to teach. This is the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. Really a beautiful idea here. He says, each thought has an erev and a boker, an evening and a morning. Erev is an expression of ta'aruvot, meaning mixture. That is having an alien thought, which we call machshava zara, a thought that is disconnected from an awareness of the divine. And it has a boker. It is an expression of bikur, or visit. That is visiting God, an aspect of the thought that is connected to God. One should strive to work with the alien intrusive thought by reconnecting it to its divine analog. So anxiety and fear, when we have an anxious thought that comes up in our minds, it has an erev and a boker, right? The erev is the part that is the anxiety. It is the part that is the unhealthy piece, that is mixed in with thoughts that are not connected to God. But it also has a boker. It has a bikur. It has a connection to the divine in the sense that it is in fact a recognition of the truth that we don't actually know what's going to happen. We never know what's going to happen, ever. We like to delude ourselves to thinking that we have a good idea of what's going to happen, but not a single one of us knows what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, 1 minute from now. We don't know. That's a scary thought. But the spiritual life is one where we condition ourselves to embrace that. And we have to work with the anxiety. I'm going to do one more thought here. This is Shneur Zalman Liadi. He's the founder of Chabad Hasidism. He said, I offer advice on how to purge one's heart of all anxiety and of every trace of worry in mundane matters, even about children, health, and sustenance. Everyone knows the dictum of the rabbis, just as one must recite a blessing for the good, so must one recite a blessing for misfortune. The Gemara explains that one should accept bad news with the same joy with which he would greet manifest and obvious good news. For this too is for the good, gam zula tova, except that it is not apparent and evident to the human eyes. Okay, so here's where we're getting more radical. Even when bad news happens, we have to be in the spiritual state of being able to greet it with joy. Gewalt. That is quite a tall order, right? But this is the spiritual life. This is the spiritual practice. This is what mindfulness is about. Okay, so let's try to put this all together now, okay? Every experience of anxiety that you and I have ever known in our lives is a thought. It's just a thought. It is not actually happening in the present moment. It's a thought about a future. It is the response of the ego to the truth, the reality that we don't know what's happening. In other words, it's a response to the ego to the radical openness of the present moment. The ego hates the present moment. The ego absolutely wants to make sure we never notice the present moment. With all of its heart and strength and might, it doesn't want us to notice the present moment because the present moment is radically open. And the ego would much rather keep us in the certainty, in the hardness of heart of past and future. That's where the ego actually lives, in a remembered or imagined past and in an imagined future. So anxiety takes, so pachad, if pachad is another way of saying a radical openness to the present moment, which is actually what it is, pachad, what we call fear, but it's in bad translation in this context, right? It's just present moment awareness. Then anxiety is the ego's interpretation of the present moment as an imagined future, which is always imagined in anxiety as a nightmare future. Okay, so the imagined nightmare, when we're sitting in our practice, we have to greet that bad news, because an imagined anxious ideation is bad news. We have to greet that with the same joy with which we would greet good news, a pleasant thought, a happy thought. Why? Because it's just a thought. It's just the ego doing its thing. It's not real. It's watching a movie, right? When you're sitting in a movie, it can be, you're watching a scary movie, you are scared sitting in that movie theater, right? It's scary. That's a good scary movie, right? But it's all it is. It's a movie. You're actually just sitting in the movie theater. So in the present moment, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, but keep looking at the present moment. It's peaceful. Have you noticed? I mean, really, notice the present moment right now. It's completely peaceful. Isn't that amazing? You know, I mean, you may have been watching the news, you may have been, you know, whatever, seeing all the images and all the horror stories. In this moment, for you, all of that is over. And if thoughts go to a scary future with disease and all kinds of scary, terrible things happening, nope, that is simply a movie that is being projected by your mind. So we are simply, now we are not, the act of sitting in meditation, we are telling the story of our anxiety before our truest selves, which is the radical openness of this moment. Okay, so with that, let's take a few minutes to sit now with this, and we'll practice with this. The pachad versus da'aga, with the awe of the present moment versus the worry and anxiety of the ego. So please, everybody, sit up comfortably in your seats with stability. If you can have your feet on the floor, that's great. Sitting with your body balanced in the seat, with your hands comfortably placed either on your lap or folded in a way that's just comfortable. Become aware of all the tense places in your muscles and just bring your awareness to them, and just through your awareness, allow any of those tensions in your body to relax. And when you're ready, just allow yourself to notice the breath. Notice the gentleness of how your body breathes you in this moment without you doing anything for it. The breath comes in, the breath leaves, and then it comes in again. The breath is our teacher for how life supports us. The heart beats, the blood flows, the breath comes in and out. Our organs function miraculously in perfect harmony, giving us the blessing of this moment. And as we're breathing, we might notice some tensions again somewhere in our body. Maybe a pain, a discomfort, or something that feels out of balance. And that's okay. Let's just notice now. We're in a balanced state of mind, heart, spirit. So that even if anything is out of balance, the stability of our spirit now, of our breath, embraces it, notices it, loves it, accepts it, without judgment, without pushing away. And similarly, as we notice the breath, breathing in and breathing out, all kinds of thoughts and feelings come and go. Some of them are pleasant, feelings that support our practice now, feelings that are good news for us right now, feelings recognizing the blessing of this moment, the peacefulness of this moment. And some of the thoughts are bad news. Thoughts of frightening things we might have seen this week. And anxious thoughts about what's going to happen in the future. And as we breathe, we are the loving, radically open awareness within which even these thoughts of past and future arise. We have enough space, spaciousness, enough heart, enough love to be able to contain all of these thoughts, positive, negative, neutral, that flow through us at 1,000 miles a second. And when a thought about an unpleasant future arises, if it should arise, this is the practice of greeting it with joy. Joy is just another word for openness, of freedom, of being not defined by a thought. If you're seeing visions of an unpleasant future, notice it, honor it, and come back to the breath, because in this breath, there is only this moment. There's only the peace of this moment. Doesn't matter how real it feels. Doesn't matter how many proofs your mind can work out for how it's true. Even if you feel absolutely certain that something is going to happen, just breathe through it. That's all an imagined future. All of it. The only thing that's real ever is just this now. That's it. This is the practice. As we sit in past and future, we only give it power when we believe that it's true. So simply noticing it without identifying with it, but simply greeting it. Loving it. And allow it to live its life and then die, because it always will. And then all that's left is this breath and the peace that is always here in the present moment. And that is truly good news. Take another couple of minutes in silence. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la. I lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, 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 lie. Ya lie, lie, ya lie, lie, ya lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, 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 lie. Ya lie, 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 lie. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la ya la 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 la. Okay. So, anyone have any questions or reflections that they'd like to, excuse me, share about the teaching or the practice. Now's the time you can ask. I want to talk a little bit about, I'll go a little deeper into what I was talking about before, this notion of pachad as a kind of, as a good thing, you know, and what that really means. When we really sit with the nature of the mind, we begin to notice that, yes, of course, it's obvious that what's in the past is being remembered as something that's happened long ago, or maybe just yesterday, or maybe 5 minutes ago. We know that we can see that that's not here. But then what we do is we construct a vision of a future that is derived from the past. And that's what the ego is, right? It's all a construct. And, you know, and eventually when we really go deep into this practice, we begin to notice the ego is just how the mind works. It is constantly dreaming the reality that we take as our conventional reality. Actually, everything that look around at your world, it's all being dreamed. This is one of the things that's very hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around, that what you're looking at is actually a dream. Remember, I'm speaking only from the radical perspective of mindfulness, okay? I'm not saying that, you know, life is but a dream. You know, things that are real are real. You know, when I talk in these contexts, it's always from the perspective of mindfulness. You are dreaming even what you think of as the present moment. Why do I say that? Because the present moment is based on a thought of something that's already over, right? When you look around at the room that you're sitting in right now, it's over. You're just projecting that onto an imagined future that makes you think that this is all one continuous stream of a solid reality around you. Actually, it's all a projection of the mind, right? That's actually what's happening. We're looking at a mental construct of a reality based upon sensory awareness. So what does that mean? What it means, and what does it imply? It implies that what's really actually happening in the present moment is unknowable. We don't actually know what is actually the present moment. We don't have the sensory hardware to be able to actually perceive it, right? It's beyond our mind's capacity to project it. That's why we have these egos that are simply projecting past and future, past and future, past and future. The present moment is actually the best word to capture the present moment, therefore, is no thing, nothing, right? And when you think if what's really going on is nothing, that's a terrifying thought for the ego, isn't it? There is nothing. But, you know, from that nothing, everything emerges. All reality comes into being with this thought, right? With the story of you, the dream of you, right? I'm speaking from the dream of Gil Steinloff, right? That's just a dream. It's just as, you know, put your name there. It's just a construct. So as we sit in our mindfulness practice, what we're doing is we're recognizing all of it, even you. And I mean, starting from awareness, whatever, the chair, the floor, the walls, the window, the table, the tree outside the window, all of that is actually being projected from your mind. What is really there? Unknowable, the don't know mind. That's what the ego perceives as pachad. That's why we use the word fear. And all the rest is just stuff to notice, because that's all that's happening. It's just the mind doing its thing. Here's what I can say, though. From being a practitioner for many, many years, as some of us who are also on this can maybe attest to as well, what we can say about the no thing that is out there, that is unknowable, is that it's peaceful, that it's spacious, that it is infinitely kind. Maybe this is what we mean when we talk about God. Right? All of the adjectives that we use to describe God in our prayer actually is this the words fail me, is this unknowable present awareness that is actually all that there really is. When we go through years of practice, we cultivate the sense that it's actually good. It's peace, it's joy, it's gratitude. And it humbly greets the arising of the universe moment to moment through us and how we live our lives. I want to just teach one more text, and then we'll have our final sit. Let's see. I'll do another couple of texts quickly, though. This is more Schneur Zalman of Liadi. Whether the melancholy seizes him during this service, Torah study, or prayer, or it befalls him at some other time. Now he's talking about melancholy, but it's all kind of the same thing, right? Melancholy is sadness, depression, which often manifests as anxiety. He should persuade himself that now is not the time for genuine sadness, not even for worry over serious transgressions, God forbid. For this, one needs set times and right occasion to reflect with a calm mind on the greatness of God, against whom he has sinned, so that thereby one's heart may be truly be rent with sincere contrition. It is explained elsewhere that when this time should be, and further, that as soon as his heart has been broken during these specific times, he should completely remove the anxiety from his heart and believe with a perfect faith that the Lord has dismissed his sin and is abundantly forgiving. This is the true joy in God, which comes after anxiety, as mentioned above. So what on earth is he talking about here for our practice? Here's what I would say. The key word here is now, right? That if you are taken hold of by melancholy or anxiety or depression, notice that now is not the time. In other words, that in this present moment, there is no sadness. The sadness that you're experiencing is a reaction to thoughts of past and future. And that's all they are. And that when you realize that, and so that's when he uses the words that are couched in traditional Jewish typologies of sinning in this sense, to be a sinner, to be in a state of mental or spiritual sin is the state of being out of harmony with this deeper truth that now is not ever a place, a time, an experience where anxiety can ever persist. I'm going to end with Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. When a person despairs, their intellect and mind go into exile. This makes it very hard for them to concentrate their mind on tshuva, returning to God. The main reason why people are far from God is that they do not stop to consider what the main purpose of their existence is. But when someone is happy, their mind becomes settled and they are able to understand things clearly. Joy is freedom. When a person fills their mind with joy, their intellect becomes free from its exile. They can control their mind and intellect however they want, so as to concentrate on their goal and return to God. And I think what Rabbi Nachman is saying there is the idea that joy is the answer to anxiety. Joy isn't just happy. Joy is what we mean by mindfulness. Joy is what we mean by meeting the thoughts with our deepest awareness. I see there is a point from Patty. So prologue, past is not a prediction. The present is peace. How does our string of peaceful moments prepare us for moving on to the next? Is peaceful innocence staying present, is staying stuck? A good stuck in kindness and bliss? Good. So I think, Patty, are you asking, will we be stuck if we are not planning for a future? Is that kind of the question that we're getting there?
Well, can you hear me, Gil?
Yeah.
Not getting stuck in bliss, because that, doesn't make sense. It's a wonderful thing, but I don't know. I'm wrestling with this. It's beautiful and powerful, and it's so at odds with with feeling, the idea that you can feel peaceful and concentrate on the peace. It kind of feels mindless, not mindful. And that is the antithesis of sort of the fight or flight humanity that we wrestle with. So I love the idea, and I'm certainly incredibly taken with it today. But I think I just said what I feel. Is it mindless and not mindful?
Good. So those are all great, and thank you for expressing this, because we all wonder this, right? This occurs to all of us. There's a lot that doesn't make sense to the ego, right? This stuff that I'm talking about. First of all, I'm trying to put the ineffable into words, which is always a problem, and it's particularly because we are all egoic beings. We understand things very much in these ways of framing our reality. So bliss is not a feeling. Joy is not a feeling. We have joyful, yes, we have happy feelings, we have contented feelings that are the effect of joy. But the goal is not to make ourselves feel happy or joyful or blissful. You can't do that. You feel what you feel, right? The practice is the practice of conditioning our awareness so that we are open to what is there beyond thoughts of past and future. And what I'm naming is a kind of radical openness, which is the essence of joy and bliss. It is the state of not being defined by any of those kinds of constructs of mind. That is joyful. And you can't, if you think you can be joyful forever and stay stuck in that, that's just another story of a future, right? Like people say, oh, they talk about enlightenment, people who achieve enlightenment. That's bullshit. There is no such thing as achieving enlightenment. You're either enlightened to this thought in this moment, or you're not. That's it. There's only this moment. Sometimes there are all moments throughout the day when any of us can be enlightened. It's just in the present moment. Whenever we are radically in the present moment, that's it. The next thought might come, and then we get attached to it, and then we're no longer enlightened. That's okay. that's the practice. And then we notice it. Oh, I'm projecting a future. The ego is projecting the story of a future. That's enlightenment. As soon as we do that, we're all enlightened. Until the next thought comes. Right? And that's how it works. And that's how it works. So there's no stuck here. There's no stuck. Stuck is a story of a future. The reality is there's no such thing as stuck.
Right. Well, I'm going to go with that. That feels good.
I love it. And please keep questions coming. These are really important.
Thank you.
These are really, really important questions because we are all having them, right? If you're feeling confused, I guarantee other people are confused too. And so we give each other permission to to try to understand it better. And don't worry if you don't track everything that I'm talking about today. This is, I'm speaking from practice, and we're all on that path now. Okay, so let's just finish with another couple of minutes of sitting, and then we'll close. So everyone, again, get yourself relaxed, alert. Take a nice deep cleansing breath, and release. Another deep breath, and release. Now allow yourself to come into the breath in nice normal breathing. Allow the universe to breathe you. Allow the universe to give rise to a body, to a chair, to a room, to a mind, and to an ego. This reality is actually dreaming you, dreaming this moment. Some in Kabbalah, they talk about it as God is looking into a mirror and you're it. It's not that you're God. All of it is God, and you're a piece of it. So breathe with the divine breath that gives rise to this moment. And notice that the ego projects stories of a future that makes you the star of the show, because that's the job of the ego. It's usually the star of the nightmare. But that's just what the ego does. The reality of the moment is this whole world is this beautiful, magnificent, infinitely complex story that is being dreamed by the divine, the supernal mind, which gives birth to your mind. To this breath, to this perceived moment. And if all of this is pretty highfalutin for you, just notice this in-breath, because that's actually all there is, and this out-breath. Notice the gentle, balanced peacefulness of this moment, even if mind is going constantly to thoughts of past and future. Actually, you're still being breathed, the heart still beats, the body still sits in chair. And there is a stillness that supports the functioning of life, the arising of this moment. The whole universe is arising in this moment and breathing you into being with each breath. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Thank you, everybody. I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. We'll daven tonight at 6:30, tomorrow at 9:15, Sunday morning 9. And look forward to seeing you this Shabbos. Take care, everybody.